At Delta Airlines and its coalition, the Capital Access Alliance, is working with the FAA on a project that could lower plane ticket prices for flying into Reagan National Airport. To give us the skinny in the skies, Brian Walsh is with the Capital Access Alliance on our AT&T line. Welcome to the airwaves, sir, to talk about the air.
Good morning. It's good to be with you.
What is it all about, Alfie?
So right now, Congress is debating the FAA reauthorization bill, and as part of that, there is a bipartisan effort by Republicans and Democrats to try to increase the number of flights to and from Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport. DCA, as it's called, is the only airport in the country that's subject to a federal perimeter rule going back to 1966, which limits the number of flights that can go in and out of DCA. It's an archaic regulation. It's been in place nearly 60 years, and there's members of Congress who want to change it precisely so other cities outside D.C., like Lansing and elsewhere, could potentially get more direct flights.
Why was that limit put there in the first place?
So, for folks who've been to D.C. before, D.C. has two airports. There's Reagan National, which is right next to the city, just across the river in Arlington, Virginia. And there's Dulles International, which is about 25 miles outside the city. Now, back in 1966, no one lived outside Dulles. It was in a place area called Loudoun County. It had about 35,000 residents. So it was put in place at a time to protect Dulles, because the thinking was, well, Reagan is right next to D.C. People will just use that unless we put in place a mechanism where Dulles is like the long-haul airport and DCA is the short-haul airport. But as we've seen, like a lot of other places, there's been a population explosion in Northern Virginia. So 10 times more people live in Loudoun County today than they did nearly 60 years ago. So there was really a protectionist measure that was put in place by the federal government that may have made sense in 1966, but really doesn't anymore in 2023.
Well, anybody that's going into Washington, D.C. would prefer Reagan, right?
Well, there's some people who would if you're doing business in the city, but yeah. Other areas of Northern Virginia, there's been a tech boom. There's, I live in Fairfax County, right? In 1966, there was 400,000 people who lived in Fairfax County. There's over 1 million people today. Loudoun County, there's over 450,000 people. So there's a lot of people who live outside Dulles now that maybe just want to use Dulles. So there's plenty of companies who do business out there. But, if you want to go to D.C., Reagan is more convenient. But I think the broader issue is that because of this artificial rule, it's severely limited the competition in the D.C. marketplace. And so Washington, D.C. has the highest ticket prices of any metro area in the country to fly to. And so our argument is that if you give consumers more choices, you pull back the thumb of the federal government in this area, they'll have more competition. More competition leads to lower prices.
There's been significant investment in the airport facilities at Reagan, too, hasn't there?
There was just a $1 billion terminal expansion, which, I live near both DCA, and I'm kind of in the middle between DCA and Dulles, and so I use both airports regularly. In DCA, the passenger experience has been improved markedly, and that's the argument. The other argument we make is that this just opened up. It was specifically designed to add thousands of more passengers. But like everything in Washington, there's always another side who is trying to defend the status quo, and unfortunately, on the other side of this debate, we have United Airlines, which controls 70% of the gates at Dulles International, and no surprise, they don't want more competition. So they are leading a fight against this. Delta and others are pushing for this. So it's going to be a big week here in Washington. The bill is supposed to be on the House floor this week, and we're expected to have a vote. So we're encouraging people to visit our website, capitalaccessalliance.com, learn more about this issue. You can contact your member of Congress and ask them to authorize more flights, which will lower prices.
Is it partisan in any way?
It's not. It's one of these very rare issues that doesn't break across party lines. Now, it does break across regional lines. And, there are folks who, United, for example, is pushing hard on members of Congress where they have hubs. And, it's going to be interesting how it breaks out. But you have an interesting debate here where you have conservative members of Congress pushing for it, you have liberal members of Congress pushing for it. But so this is one of those rare issues in Washington these days that's actually not partisan.
It is astonishing how close that airport is to everything in Washington, D.C., at least in terms of the monuments and the mall and the White House, and the train system is absolutely fantastic, too. I mean, you land and you're in the loop there, the Capitol loop, minutes.
It is very convenient. But, because so many people, because there's so few direct flights, so just to put it in perspective, there's only because of this federal regulation, there's only 20 flights a day that are allowed to go beyond 1,250 miles. Now, Michigan is inside the perimeter, but other cities like Denver and Salt Lake City. So think, for example, that San Diego and San Antonio are the 7th and 8th largest cities in the country. There's no direct flights from DCA right now.
To the nation's capital, for God's sakes. Thank you. Good luck in D.C. this week.